Kia ora koutou. My name's Juliet O'Connell. I'm a Biosecurity Officer at the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. My core role is the implementation of the Regional Pest Management Plan in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, based in Whakatane, with a focus on pest plants and animals. So a huge part of my role over the past couple of years, though, has also been to help develop and implement a new biosecurity data system, GeoPest, alongside my colleagues Sam Stevens and the guys at Ethos Environmental, who we contracted to develop the system. So just a little bit of background about our pest plant program. The bulk of our pest plant program is related to landowner compliance with the RPMP, and every year we visit around 2,000 properties covering approximately 20,000 hectares to look for pest plants across the Bay of Plenty region. Depending on the species and what category it falls under in the RPMP, we will either direct landowners to control the infestation or council will carry out control. Then we have our regional surveillance program, which looks for species that are up and coming threats to the region. And part of this is the collection of eDNA samples. Then we've got our biocontrol program, where we use one living organism to control another. And lastly, the advocacy and advisory service we provide. It's obviously really important to be able to collect data on all of these aspects of the program. This ensures that we can accurately report on progress and provide our councillors and ratepayers with the assurance that we are carrying out our program in the most cost-effective way. So in terms of our biosecurity data requirements, our previous system meant that our field workers spent about 50% of their time in the office downloading and replicating data. So the first requirement was ensuring that we had a mobile-friendly data collection tool. The second is the ability to track changes over time. So previous systems stacked polygons and GPS points year after year, and these weren't linked. So we ended up with data on top of data, which was really hard to track. And the third is automated reporting. So because the data is automatically going into a centralised database, we are able to report on progress in real time without having to load countless GPX files. This obviously means there's a lot of time saved in terms of data management, planning and reporting. And a big bonus is that it allows managers to keep up to date with how programs are running. So we decided to bite the bullet and go all in with a goal. So data is collected in the field using field maps, Survey123 and Quick Capture, with the tracker function in field maps also being utilised. The data goes directly into a centralised cloud database and then feeds into a desktop editor that was built using Web App Builder and a number of dashboards that summarise and analyse the data that's being collected in the field. So it all comes together in a nice user-friendly web page that was built using Experience Build. So up the top here, we've got a number of different tabs, one for the desktop editor and then some for our dashboards, any resources and a bit of an overview in the middle there. In terms of our core biosecurity data sets, we worked out that we needed 4 key data sets. The first being pest plant infestations. So this includes historic information from old databases as well as GPS points, and then current infestation data going forward. The second is property parcels. So the colours symbolise the level of compliance that the property is at following the latest inspection. And these property parcels have a number of related tables that are associated with it. The first being the ownership, which comes from our ratings database. The second is occupiers. The third is compliance with the RPMP. The fourth being permission, so whether we are carrying out work on a property and we have permission to undertake service delivery. And then the fifth table is correspondence that we've had with the landowner that needs to be recorded. So the third data set is tracks to show where field workers have walked or driven, and the fourth being operational areas. So that's things like surveillance areas, or high-risk areas that need to be surveyed for particular species, site management plan areas. Then we have a heap of secondary biosecurity data sets, so high-risk addresses for health and safety purposes, eDNA, biocontrol, like I described before, community support and advocacy, boundaries, points of interest, for example, signage and hazards, complaint buffers, non-RPMP or other council program community pest plant infestations, which we call open weeds. This might not necessarily be verified data, but it's really useful data for us to have. So here is a screenshot of our data structure, which looks quite complex. And you obviously can't see what's going on there, but I'll zoom into our core data sets. And what we have on the left here is our pest plant database. So we've got our parent point infestation data, which has a related table for our inspection records, and then our infestation polygons on the right here. We also have fine scale points on over the far right hand side here, which are collected using Quick Capture. Then we have our properties and owner feature services. So there's our polygon layer, which is the geometry for the parcels. And then we've got a number of related tables, as I described before. We've also got property inspection polygons, which I'll discuss further later down the track. So just diving into infestation records. So here's an example of the infestation records that are associated with the infestation parent point. So these are created either directly if the infestation is small, or creating polygons or quick capture points, which then go through an overnight process to create the record in FME. The main attributes we're collecting are the status of the infestation, so that's current, zero density, or historic, as well as the density, which is the percentage of the area that the infestation covers, and the pest plant cover, which in ecological terms is the area of occupancy. So fundamentally, what we want to see is an infestation going, tracking down to zero, and in the end being historic. So you can see here we've started at 100% density, and the area that the pest plant covered was 100 square meters to make things easy. And the next time our field worker went back to inspect it, it was down to 50%. The next time it was down to 30, and the age of the plant, there was only juveniles left. So the landowner has been controlling it between these times, but hasn't quite got it down to zero density. And then on the next visit, it's gone down to zero density. And then within a certain amount of time, we can make this historic depending on the seed bank of the particular species. So we also have a number of processes running in FME and Pro to automate some things, as I mentioned before. So for example, like updating the pest plant cover attribute for a polygon based on the polygon size and the density, or like I said, creating related records from polygons and quick capture points to associate back to the parent. So I'll just take you through an example of how it's used in the field. So this is what the field worker sees when they turn their phone on and open field maps. On the left, you can see a blue dot, which is what we call the parent point. And then this point stays constant over time, and the records are collected against it to show how the infestation changed over time. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a hyperlink that will take us through to Quick Capture to capture fine scale infestation points. So here in Quick Capture, we've got key attributes such as the species and global ID, which have been passed through from the parent point that we launched from. And what we've done is we've fixed the variables for treated or not, and overwater and not overwater, leaving us to choose the size of the plant or group of biologically linked plants. These points go through the FME process at night to combine all of the pest plant covers, which will give us a total pest plant cover in meters squared, and it'll be saved as a record against that parent point. Now, in terms of the desktop side of things, so here's a desktop editor that was created using Web App Builder. You've got your layer list on the left and a number of different widgets up the top. So those are for creating, editing, measuring, and filtering data. And here I've used the group filter to narrow down to one species, so that's alligator weed. And then I can zoom into an area which has parent points to see the infestations at a property scale. So a task we assign our contractors or field workers in a work brief would be, for example, to inspect every property that has an alligator weed parent point on it and check all locations where there is historic data. So these parents represent distinct infestations. The dots you can see here are the historic data for these properties, which indicate where alligator weed has been found in previous visits. So the field worker has access to the same data in the field, and they turn that layer on to guide them to where they should be looking. Here are the tracks of where the contractors have been to check these historic locations. So you can see here that the contractors have done a pretty good job. They've systematically walked the paddocks and have been to all historic locations plus more. And we can even pull out how long it took them and the distance covered. On this next map, you can see the darker fine scale quick capture points that the contractors have collected, which show where the plants were located on this particular visit, similar to collecting data with the GPS, which was the standard before, but now we have much richer data to track these infestations for years to come and easily showing those changes over time on those records. So when the field worker leaves the property, they populate our other core data set, the property compliance data set using Survey123. The property parcel changes colour based on the latest compliance record that has been entered into the system. This example shows that the properties with alligator weed on them are non-compliant with the RPMP, but there are works in progress. This is basically what you end up with. So really accurate data of the distribution and density of alligator weed on that property, as well as the latest compliance status of the property. So in terms of dashboards, we've got 3 main dashboards for analysing the data coming in. We have our compliance effort, and one main thing on that compliance effort dashboard is our total area searched, which is broken up from partial or entire property searches. So it's just as important to know when you're looking and not finding things as it is when you are. So we've come up with a way of showing that surveillance effort, which is one of our reporting measures, and that's the percentage of the region that we have surveyed. So we couldn't just use the parcel boundaries to show areas we've searched, as some properties are really large. So in our Survey123 form, we have an extra part for if someone has carried out a partial property search. The second dashboard is one that gives us infestation specific details, such as the number of square meters and the number of infestations over the region. And we've got a number of different filters along the top that we can choose. Then the third dashboard is one that gives us more property specific infestation details. So you can see here that I have chosen the status of current alligator weed, and on the graph I've chosen up until the end of June 2021. So it shows us that there's 63 infestations over 35 properties. So that means that there's multiple infestations on some properties. So the last thing I want to talk about is the solution we came up with for all of the data that doesn't quite fit into our authoritative system. So this data might be unverified or from different teams within council or different agencies. We call this our open weeds database. So currently other teams within council, such as the land management community group teams, and we also have iwi groups that are inputting data. And we're thinking, like I said, that it might be a good solution for sharing information with other agencies. We're also using it for tracking community support and advocacy. So an example of this is the comms project that we had a couple of students undertake over the summer, which was called the Woolly Wipeout program. So this is an advocacy program where landowners phoned up to request control kits for woolly nightshade, and our summer students would input a advocacy point, and on the map you can see the locations of all the properties they visited or provided advice, and we've got a whole lot of attributes that we input about those bits of advocacy. And that's it. Any questions, just send me an email. Thanks.